that's what a meaningful life looks like. Just being able to serve in a way that's not exhausting, but in a way that is sustainable. And to really be able to do all the things that I love. So, yeah, I think my day-to-day life looks unrecognizable, but also my health, also my nervous system is unrecognizable. It was.
Welcome to the Next Best Thing podcast. I'm your host, Andrea Cline-Thomas. Now, I'm here to help you create strategies so you can live life on your terms and not the life that you believe that you have to settle for. And today's guest is the epitome of doing just that, living life on her terms. Dr. Kerry Ann Rockquemore retired in her 40s and is now an angel investor and mentor. And really, she just does whatever her heart desires, quite literally. But it wasn't always that way. You see, Dr. Rock, as we affectionately call her, was my professor in college. She navigated the tough and often toxic waters of higher education and even became a tenured professor before quitting. And in 2010, she started her own business that she exited, but that company still serves tens of thousands of professors all across the country. And it all came down to really having a plan, a realistic one, an authentic one, and working that plan consistently. Now, we're at the beginning of the year, and if you've already set your goals, amazing. You're going to want to listen closely to see if you've asked yourself enough questions. And if you don't have a plan or don't know where to start, don't worry. We've got you covered. But before we get into this episode, be sure to rate, review, and subscribe to this podcast. Also join our newsletter called Next Nuggets for more content straight to your inbox. Click the link in the show notes to sign up. Now, Dr. Rock has been one of my biggest inspirations. Every year through her Clarity Retreat, she helps lead thousands of people as they design the life that they desire. And I'm just so thrilled to share her with you. All right, Dr. Rock, I am so happy to have you here with me today, like beyond thrilled. Thank you so much for joining. And I do want to start this way by telling you that this podcast actually, I don't know if you're going to remember because it was probably a blip for you, but it was like a big deal for me. That I called you one time in 2016 or 2017. I think you were in Mexico. Okay. And I was like, how do you know when it's time to do something else? And you told me that I needed to interview people. You're a journalist, go out and talk to people, interview them about what their lives are really like. So you don't get the rose-colored glasses view of something else that you might be interested in. You really get an idea of what they are actually doing. So I went out and did that and had great conversations with people and learned so much about them and expanded my network. But that, because of how juicy those conversations were, that is the basis of this podcast, is kind of simulating having those conversations as somebody who's seeking and searching and trying to figure out what's going on. So you inspire that.
Oh, I'm so
And so that was my turning point where I was like, I need an exit strategy. It took some years still, but I knew, I was like, all right, I don't think this is unsustainable. And you've written that in 2006 was kind of your point for you and your husband of all right, this is just not working. And you guys described it as being miserable workaholic perfectionists careening towards midlife crises. That's what you wrote.
Find a point on it. Yep.
So explain that.
Yeah. I think, my husband and I basically had done everything you're supposed to do to be happy, right? Mm-hmm. We had gotten all the degrees, we had the impressive jobs, we bought a house, we lived in an amazing city, we got to travel the world for work, we volunteered at our church, we were doing all the things. And we were just miserable. Like, if you looked at us from the outside, like we looked really successful,
Mhm.
especially for our age, and especially for where we came from.
Mhm.
Um, but only you live inside your own life,
Right.
right? And we had a strong enough relationship to be able to admit to each other we were both miserable.
Mhm.
Just couldn't continue just working to the point of exhaustion every week for I don't know why. It was awful.
Yeah. A lot of
And
people
I
stay
say
there.
that, and I say that in total clarity that like there's also a huge amount of privilege with our misery, right? Like
Mhm.
um, we were unhappy, but of course all our needs were met, right?
Right.
And I think in some ways that made it harder because there was also this piece about how dare I complain when all my needs are met,
Mhm.
right? I have an amazing job. I have a job a lot of other people. I was a tenured professor. A lot of other people work really hard and never get.
Mhm.
Um, but again, only you live inside your life, right? And we were both off.
Yeah, and it's hard to come to that realization, right, of saying it out loud. It's one thing to feel it in your body and the friction and I
Yeah,
don't I'm dreading Mondays. It's another thing to say it out loud, but then it's still something completely different to do something
right.
drastically about it.
Indeed.
So, how did you know what the first steps would be?
Yeah, so I should say that I am incredibly risk averse. Um, Part of becoming a professor and getting tenure is so that you have job security for life, right?
Mhm.
I'm not a big risk taker. So even the thought of change was absolutely terrifying, right?
Really? Dr. Rock, I would never in my life
Yeah.
ever describe you that way.
Oh, you're kidding! Really?
Oh my
Wow.
god.
Yes, that is exactly how I am. Risk averse. And let me say this. It's important always to like know these, like when people see me from the outside, they're like, you were a tenured professor, you left a guaranteed job for life and started a company, even though you had never even worked in a company before. Like, that's bananas, right? But I think the real story is like it took years,
Yeah.
right? Like there were years behind the scenes of very slow, steady,
Mhm.
gradual movement, lots of micro decisions, right? In order to get up my courage to be able to step out of absolute certainty. Whereas I do think people who are genuinely, in my mind at least, there are people who just jump out the window,
Mhm.
right? When they want to do something. I am of the little baby steps. Little baby steps. Yeah. And I'm a slow decision maker when it comes to, um, let's be honest, I have really strong intuition. I do
Mhm.
feel like I have a powerful connection to my inner wisdom, but I also have to hear it in numerous ways and have it validated in other
Mhm.
places in my life. I don't just like, I have a idea
Mhm.
and then I go run with it. I have to kind of, I'm slow and steady in that way. So,
Wow. Well, I learned something. I mean, no, because I think in the search for tenure, because that's why
yeah.
you left, because I was so sad when you left the
Mhm.
university because it's just like, I need to go, like, this is not going to happen here. I need to go to this other place. And you were moving around so much and stuff like that. And then you got the tenure. Wow. Well, I learned something about you because I think I'm slow. I'm really quiet though while it's happening, but
Yeah.
then it looks like on the outside that I just jump off of a cliff. Because when I
Yeah.
jump, because and that's the thing is that I leave some breadcrumbs, but you have to be really paying attention, and then it just looks like boom, she just went crazy one day,
Yeah.
just like because it's been building up for so long, and so taking those small steps. I think more people can identify with you taking small steps. Talk about that, because that was the planning piece, right? That you all did. I remember you telling us how like you would have crazy talk. Is you guys still call it crazy talk with your
We
husband?
do, we do.
Where you would go and you guys would talk about your dreams and have your book of your dreams and stuff. And I was like, wow, this is amazing. But just planning, talk about how planning has just been core to your growth,
Sure.
really.
Well, I think when we both realized how unhappy we were, um, we took some time to um, really think about our life,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like, I think we realized, oh, we've been doing all the things that everybody else said we should be doing. Like, what do we actually want? Right? What do we want in our marriage? What do we want in our friends? What do we want for community? What do we want when it comes to our work and money and legacy? And when it comes to our physical health, our spiritual health, our emotional health? And what do we want in terms of like just growing as human beings, right? Our intellectual growth, our creative growth, our experiential growth. So we took some time to like literally envision what we wanted our life to look like across all these different domains because we had been living a life that was just work and everything else. And honestly, we were working crazy hours. So it literally was work and everything else. And so taking a step back, we kind of asked ourselves, what do we want across all these different domains of our life? And then we started really saying, we're not going to go from where we are today to kind of how we envision our life tomorrow. But in this coming year, we could take a couple steps in that direction, right? Like, what are some small steps that we could take to start moving in that direction? And so that's when we started, like, we called it our annual clarity retreat.
Mm-hmm.
And the whole idea was instead of just grabbing goals or resolutions or things that we should do out of thin air or out of whatever everybody tells us we should be doing, to really say, what's the life we're trying to build? And for goals, why don't we pick some things that will move us in that direction that we feel like we can realistically do in a year? And the planning part was simply that,
Mm-hmm.
like, okay, if we want to move in this direction, um, what do we need to do this year? Not that it's going to happen this year or this month, but like, what do we need to do to start getting ourselves ready, right? To
Mm-hmm.
start just pushing in that direction. And honestly, that's some of the planning, right?
Yeah.
Is getting, it sounds really simple, but I think most people have no idea what they want. I think most people, even if they know what they want, they can only like think of it in one domain, or maybe they
Mm-hmm.
have a two-dimensional life, work and family, work and everything else. We don't even allow ourselves to imagine, like, what do I want across these different domains? What does a full and meaningful life look like to me? And then to really be willing to say, um, this is a concrete way I could step in that direction this year. And of course, personally, I love goals because I'm very motivated, especially if it's like, this is how I want to live. I'm very motivated by that. And so um, during the year, we really keep those goals alive, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so we kept doing that year after year after year. And pretty soon, like, life starts to look really different. And then it looks radically different. And then it's unrecognizable. And we start this process every year by pulling out, we have this big book that we've been keeping since we started. I think it's 17 years now, where every year it's like, what's the biggest thing we can imagine and dream?
Mm-hmm.
And then, we reread it because what we used to think was like crazy, unimaginable. Oh my God, this would be such an amazing life. And now it is our life, right?
Mm-hmm.
and to be able to see how things have unfolded over time. If my house caught on fire, that's the one thing I would take out.
Wow. It's your
We're now
book
in
of
the second
dreams.
volume. Yeah. The first one held 10 years and now we're in our second one. Like that's what I would take out because um, I think really using our gifts, our creative gifts to imagine, to be able to listen to that still soft voice about what's right for us, right? And then to be able to create a life. And for us, it's a life of service. So for us, that's what's meaningful. But to be able to create that in a way that feels both in um, characteristics and pace,
Mhm.
um, fulfilling, that's like the best project of my life.
Yeah, it's the intention behind it that I really, really love. I want to break down a number of the things that you said.
Mhm.
First, starting with the fact that it is a retreat that you go on, meaning that you remove yourself from your kind of day-to-day life. Why is that important for you to kind of remove yourself, even if you're not going far away on a trip, but just remove yourself from your everyday surroundings to do this work?
Well, I think honestly, it's a luxury to do it as a retreat. It's ideal because you are completely 100% out of your day to day life. And I think you are able to sort of um, not be distracted. Right. And so nobody's doing laundry on the break and nobody is, cooking or doing this and that. So I think the key, what's more important is the cessation of distraction, right?
Hmm.
During COVID, we didn't travel and we still did our annual clarity retreat. Nowhere was open, but we just went outside. The key is no distractions, no phones, nothing's beeping, no electronics. There's just time to really connect with your inner wisdom, to connect with what you truly desire. So, certainly, um, I lead a group of people through this every year.
Hmm.
Some people just do it in a day, right? They do it at their house in a day. Other people do it, they do a little bit of the work each week and they carve out space. They close their home office and
Hmm.
just attend to it. Um, but I think the key piece is shutting down the distractions and really being open to yourself.
Yeah. How about um, looking back? I know the first step is really like reviewing the year that was, right? The past
Yes.
year. How I know you talk about not letting like maybe the exhaustion that you're feeling at the end of the year cloud your assessment of all 12 months. How can you accurately really reflect what the past year was or was not?
Yeah, I mean, this is the number one thing. People are like, however I feel right now is how the year was,
Hmm.
right? I'm exhausted, I'm tired, I'm cranky, whatever. It was a bad year, right? And I for us, we go through a series of questions
Hmm.
which encourage a longer view, right? So something as simple as what were your goals last year, right? Where did you start the year? Did you meet them or not meet them? Why or why not? Um, but even things like what unexpected blessings came into your
Hmm.
life during the year, and um, to trigger my memory, I just go back through my camera roll, right?
Hmm.
Because whenever I'm blessed, I'm like, oh, look at me. I take pictures of things and, just going back through my camera roll, so many things I forgot, right?
Hmm.
I'm not on social media, but people who are look back at their social media feeds. It's just a way of remembering, but also asking things like, what peak experiences did I have this year? Right?
Hmm.
When are those moments when I felt like fully alive and inspired and in awe? What was I doing when they happened? Are there any patterns, right? And things, I think probably my favorite question is, what's working and what's not working. If
Mm-hmm.
I look across the whole year, and because my husband and I do this together, inevitably when we compare our lists, somebody has something on their working list that they thought was totally the jam, and it's on the other person's not working list. Which is great because that inspires conversation. It's great, if you have a partner to do it that way. But also, I like to end kind of that year in review thinking about positive impact, especially for people who are givers. Um, we tend to just think about the things that didn't work out, right? Or the
Mm-hmm.
things we didn't get done, or if we missed something or somebody or some opportunity. And it's amazing what happens when givers actually quantify and describe their like all the ways that they've given in their household, in their neighborhood, in their community, in their extended family, like in their, whatever their church, temple, etc. Like when givers actually quantify what they've given, they're kind of stunned, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so actually thinking about positive impact, all of this I really see as just data. Like I look at my year and I'm looking for data because I want to be able to see patterns. And you know, almost every year, I think the year went one way, and then I go and do the work, and I'm like, wow, this was an amazing year. And of course, there's good, bad, ugly, beautiful. But my pattern is I see all the things that maybe didn't quite work or were a
Yeah.
failure or something, and I miss the whole mountain of blessings, amazing synchronicities,
Mm-hmm.
people who came into my life, new projects born. Like life is really, really good, even in the midst of so much that's problematic.
I know. That's so true. I love the focus on blessings. I love that. Because also when you're starting to, you train yourself to kind of focus on it and review it, then you start looking for it. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? Like I gotta find a blessing. Let me look where's the blessing? Where's the blessing? Let me find the blessing. Right.
Well,
So
and I'm giggling, but it's profound, right? Like,
yeah.
if your worldview is looking for what is wrong versus your worldview is looking for what is right and good and joyful in your life, that's a very different way of moving in the world.
100%. Let's talk about realistic goal setting.
Yep.
And you're talking about how don't have a goal that should be, take 3 to 5 years and try to do it in one. You're
Yeah.
setting yourself up. How do you know what's realistic and not that's not playing small?
Yeah.
It's the balancing of both things of really trying to push yourself to your goals, but also having your feet on the ground.
Yeah. So I would say that the vast majority of people, when they set goals for the year, um, to me, it looks like 5 years of goals, right?
Mhm.
And so part of, I think, if you're not sure, um, is to just take out a piece of paper and map out. Here I am today. Here's where this goal is. Like, what work needs to be done to bridge that gap? I like to try to map out as many of the projects and tasks as possible, not just to create see how much work there is, but really to get a sense of, A, do I even understand what's involved here? Right? Do
Mhm.
I even know how this works? Because for a lot of people, they set a goal, they have no idea how something works, and that's okay. But then
Mhm.
the goal is figuring out how it works,
Right.
right?
And that takes time too. That takes time to figure it
Yeah.
out and then execute it and then iterate because you're still figuring out how it works.
And to talk to people who are already doing it, right?
Right.
Like you talked about this before. Um, Talking to people who are already doing it is one of the most powerful ways of figuring out, A, do I even want to do this? And B, how does it all work?
Hmm.
As well as building, a network for your eventually doing it. But also because sometimes you map it out and you do realize when you see the sheer volume of what's involved, oh, this is this is a 2-year project, not a 2-month project.
Mm-hmm.
So to me, kind of making things as concrete as possible helps me to figure out what's realistic. Um, but also, I'm always just trying to hit a sweet spot between it's a bit of a stretch,
Mm-hmm.
right? Um, it is going to be a stretch and I am going to push. Um, but it's not so enormous that some I don't know how it's going to happen, right?
Mm-hmm.
People say to me all the time, I'm going to build a 7-figure business this year. I'm like, okay, great. Do you have a business plan or marketing plan or whatever? And they're like, Jesus. I'm like, I love me some Jesus, but I'm gonna need some more details here, right? Like, and again, like, I don't know if that works, great. But most people who, for me, are like, I'm gonna manifest it, I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna do this, but they don't really know what's involved in actually going from I have an idea for a startup to an actual company generating 7 figures of revenue. That's not usually like a 1-year project. That's going
Right.
to take a little bit more. So anyway, I think getting as concrete about it, but also personally, I don't like to do this alone, right? Because it's the
Mm-hmm.
getting in conversation, I think, that helps people to, um, a buddy's going to ask you questions,
Mm-hmm.
right? Even in the spirit of support and wanting your goals. My husband has no problem asking me questions about kind of the level at which I've set a goal,
Mm-hmm.
right? And we have never in our lives set too low of goals. That's just not the kind of people we
That's not the kind of people. For the people who don't know, people who are unfamiliar with Dr. Rock, setting a low goal is not in her DNA.
well,
Period. Like,
it's not a danger for us, right?
right, right,
So, I think in getting in conversation with people also really helps to get real about it.
yeah.
Because if I can't have a conversation with you about my goal, something's a little off there,
Mm-hmm.
right?
And I was going to ask next, it dovetails perfectly into the accountability piece of
Mhm.
so having a partner like along the way. So you've made the
Yeah.
plan, you've made the goals for all aspects of your life. What should accountability, like the touch points,
Yeah.
look like? What do they look like for you?
For me, I need a lot of touch points
Hmm.
because I would sooner die than disappoint somebody I've made a commitment to.
Mm.
But I give myself a lot of leeway and grace. I will disappoint myself. And so all I need, just knowing that's how I am, and I don't have any shame about it. Um, Knowing that's how I am, I just need for somebody else to know what I said I'm going to do, who's going to hold me accountable. And for me, accountability is like weekly touches, right?
Okay.
I think it looks different for different people. But for me, I love to have an accountability group, a group of people who I say, this is what I commit to doing this week. And then next week, I have to say whether I did it or not. And
Hmm.
if I didn't do it, why I didn't do it. And, again, just knowing myself, um, I'm not going to do it till right before the meeting, right? I may do it 5 minutes before the meeting, but it will get done
Right.
because I would be embarrassed to show up in front of other people week after week after week, being like, yeah, I said I was going to do it. I didn't do it. I didn't do it. I didn't do it. Like, it's just that would be humiliating to me.
Yeah.
So I may do it right before the meeting, but it will absolutely get done. Now, other people don't need that much accountability. Other people, accountability looks different. But to me, accountability means answering for what you said you were going to do and holding your word, right?
Hmm.
And if you don't do it, being able to process why.
Hmm.
Um, that's my version of accountability. I think other people think of it very differently, and that's okay. I think the key is asking yourself, especially if you set a stretch goal, like what's actually going to get me to do this, right?
Hmm.
And if I start talking myself out of it, what's the backstop here, right? Like,
Yeah.
what's going to happen? Because if it's nothing, you may just talk yourself out of it.
Yeah. I want people to really get a sense of how far your life has, or how much your life has transformed since the moment in 2006 that you talked about. Like, explain how you changed everything.
Let's see. When we started this, I
Hmm.
was a professor. Um, my husband, I think, was a partner in a consulting firm. We both quit our jobs. We both started our own respective companies. We both grew those companies. We both exited those companies. Um, we traveled to, I think, 30 different countries. We became philanthropists. We became angel investors. We became mentors to other social entrepreneurs. Um, we have lived in, um, I've lost track of how many places.
That's always my first question to you. Where are you now? Where are you now? Like, I had a house in Chicago, and then I'm
Yes, we
in
have
Detroit, and then I'm a
lived.
snowbird in Mexico and in California and all these places. So,
We have lived in many different permutations, but I currently live in my dream house right on the beach in Santa Monica, California. Um, yeah, I just feel like I'm kind of talking about all of the like ego accomplishment types of
stuff, yeah.
things. But I think probably what's changed so much more is that I was just completely miserable. And I wasn't really living the life that was mine to live. And, I feel like since then, I'm completely off of social media,
Hmm.
completely unplugged from all of the things that really shape how you think you should do things. So
Although
that
I
I
miss you not being on social media. I love the
oh,
blog. I read every single one.
yeah, I live a very private life. It's so radical, right? And more than anything, I'm retired, right?
Yeah.
So am able to spend my time, as much time as possible, in my zone of genius, helping as many people as I can, as freely as I can, using my gifts. And for me, um, that's what a meaningful life looks like, just being able to serve in a way that's not exhausting, but in a way that is sustainable, um, and to really be able to do all the things that I love. So, yeah, I think my day-to-day life looks unrecognizable, but also my health, also my nervous system is unrecognizable from what it was. Uh, yeah, it's hard for me to say any part of I spend a huge amount of my day, instead of hyper vigilant for every potential thing that could go wrong, really feeling on a day-to-day basis that incredible, deep, rich feeling of joy and contentment. And no matter what else has happened in my life, being able to live in that space of joy um, is the best part of it.
That's the part. That's what I'm telling you. Like, when they say goals, even though I didn't know at the time in college how you were feeling about the whole circumstance, it was
Yeah.
2002 maybe.
Yeah.
Um, but I was just like, I have never met a woman like this in my life. Like, to me, you were so free back then. Like, I was like, oh my God. And then it just got more and more and more. Oh my God. This is amazing. The hell? But it was great. It was great to see, like, No, you can't. Because even back then, you were doing things that you felt were great for your marriage. Like, what? Oh, well, this just works for us. Or saying, I don't want to have children. And you just already knew that. And I had never heard a woman say that out loud before. And like,
Oh.
and stuff like that. So it just was like, oh, mind blown. I was just like, I don't know who this lady is. Not to mention, you gave us your personality test in class. Like, this is who I am. We had to sign a contract for our grade. If you want an A or B, this is what you need to do. C is doing everything you're supposed to do because that's average. If you want to be above average, I don't care if your mom and dad told you were great. I said, who is this woman? What did I sign up? What did I sign up for? What? So if I could, I want to be respectful of your time. Just two more questions for you. Is your vision, how you have the vision statement for your life. Do you still read it every day?
I do.
Yeah,
I
and
do.
explain that to us, how you read a vision statement, and how, especially we were talking about burnout before, how it helps you measure what's worth your time and what's not.
Absolutely. I still use a paper planner, right?
Okay.
And that works for me because I'm retired. So,
Yeah.
uh, I'm not recommending it, but it works for me. And I just keep right in the front of my
Mm,
planner my vision, right? And for
mhm,
me, the vision is sort of what I desire across all these different areas of my life. And
mhm,
I read it out loud because um, I just feel different about it reading it
mhm.
out loud, right? And um, I put a little extra zhuzh in it when I read it. And I get started. And I mean, it's not like it takes more than, a minute or two. But as I start reading it out loud, I'm reminded on a daily basis what it is that I desire, right? What um, really, I believe that we all have that part of ourselves that knows all the answers to our questions and what's right for us. And um, that's the part I'm connecting to every year when I'm writing this vision. And so reminding myself, hey, when I was connected with my inner wisdom, really working on this is what I desired. So I'm also kind of checking in like, yeah, is that still what I desire? Of course it is.
Mhm,
But I read it out loud. And honestly, reading it first thing in the morning, these things are so cemented in my mind that they become filters for my decision making throughout the day, right? Because even though I'm retired, and maybe especially because I'm retired, people ask me to do a lot of things because they assume I have an abundance of time, which I do. But just because I have an abundance of time doesn't mean that I need to. Be the worker bee on everybody else's agenda, right? And
yes.
so this is a way of establishing and holding my own agenda, which is still, I'm a helper by nature. So
Mhm.
it's still hard for me sometimes to really hold that for myself. And I'm just running things through these filters all day long. Like if somebody says, do you want a blah blah? I'm like, is blah blah in my life vision? Actually, it isn't, right? And actually doing blah blah is going to keep me from this thing that I already worked out that I want, right? Uh, and finally, I like to really connect to it on a daily basis as a ritual, right? Because the whole world seems sort of set up to get us off our block, right? To kind of
Mm,
persuade us and pull us and drag us and everything else. And I just want to have a daily ritual where my attention and my intention is to be fully me, right? To be fully who I am in the world. And to me, connecting to that vision really is putting a stake in the ground and saying, yeah, the world's going to be swirling around me all day. Um, but I know who I am, and I know whose I am, and I know what I stand for, and I know what direction I'm moving. And that's what everything is going to be weighed against today.
do you mind just sharing one or two just so people know what it sounds like?
Sure.
Or however many you want to share. But I know it's deeply personal, so I don't want it to get too personal
That's
for you. But
okay.
yeah.
I have a happy, healthy, hot, and sexy marriage that keeps getting better. That is a great example, right? Um, and sometimes during the day, um, things you can get in some conflict, and I can ask myself, is this happy? Is this healthy? This certainly ain't hot and sexy. Like, what is going on here? But it helps me to sort of rise above and see actually what's going on here is something fairly petty, and we just need to move our way through a conflict.
Mhm.
Okay. I'll give you another one. My financial one.
Mhm.
Money comes to me easily and effortlessly. I am a wise steward of my ever growing wealth. Woo!
Oh.
and
Amen. Amen. Pass the collection plate.
And the truth is, money does actually come to me easily and effortlessly. And I sometimes know, like, I've been running a community for 5 years, and a bunch of people were like, oh, you should make this a business. You should make this a business. And I'm like, I don't wanna, right? And this one, would that be easy or effortless? No. Is this where I need my money to come from? It really isn't. I'm just trying to help people. But it gives you see what I'm saying? Like, it gives you a filter when other people are like, "Oh my god, this could be great." But no, right? I'll give you one more. I am fit, healthy, and vibrant, right?
Mhm.
And I'm not a huge fan of exercise, but I want to be fit,
Mhm.
right? I don't care what size I am. I want to be healthy. I want to like be vibrant, right? I'm 52 and I want to feel like better than I've ever felt, even if I look different, right? But guess what? When I wake up in the morning, I don't feel like going running, right?
Right,
My
right.
puppy's sitting there looking at me like, let's go run. I don't feel like it. But you know what? I get up, I strap the puppy around my waist, and we go running. Why? Because I want to be fit, healthy, and vibrant, right? Not just today, but like as I age, I want to be like radiating health, right? I want to be the best physical embodiment of me. So I mention those things because, as you can see, they become these filters, right? I can choose to stay in bed, or I can choose to get up and run, or I could choose to get up and walk. I could just let the dog out. There's all kinds of choices we're making. But every single day, we're literally making hundreds of little micro choices.
Decisions.
And
Yeah.
this is the power, which is the vision and my goals. They're just giving a direction to all those choices. And while plenty of things are outside of my control, if I start to direct the things that are in my control, things start to change. They start to change.
Yes, they start to change.
Yeah.
One thing that somebody can do, I always end with this.
Oh,
I call it the ACT UP segment. It's just ACT. Those are my initials. And so, one
mhm.
thing people can do to get them closer to the life that they desire.
Take a break from social media.
Hmm.
Unplug.
Yeah, and that's what it's done for you to kind of get you clear.
Yeah. um, in order to listen to your inner wisdom, you have to be able to hear. And if you're plugged into everybody and everything else, it's really hard to hear that inner voice because it's quiet, it's a whisper, and everything in our world is just screaming. Um, and frankly, if you can't take a break from something that is a powerful piece of information. Sometimes we call that an addiction. No shame in it. But if something has a hold on you and so much of a hold on you that you can't go a day, a week, a month without it, um, that'd be some powerful. I would have some curiosity about that.
Yeah. Dr. Rock, thank you so much. This is so great. You have been like literally, I feel like, I don't know if I tell you this enough, but you have been like one of the biggest influences on my life, hands down, easy, like just showed me just a new way. that could like exist. I literally did not know that freedom could exist at all. I had no idea. You know, my parents are immigrants, so they had to work in a specific way. So I just had no idea. And so you came and buzzed into my orbit and changed my whole thinking, and it had me question everything, and I'm better for it. So thank you so much.
Well, I received that, and in case I haven't told you, I'm so proud of you. The best part about teaching is when you get to encounter people in that magic moment of life when they're figuring out who they are, and to have the incredible honor of seeing them grow over time. It's been awesome.
Thank you. Thanks for listening to The Next Best Thing with Andrea Cline-Thomas, a Mountain Court Media production. The music was written, recorded, and produced by Gavin Casey, also known as Dark Purple. Now, if you like what you heard, please subscribe, give us a 5-star rating, and write a comment on your favorite podcast platform. And don't forget to share it with friends. I hope this episode helps you on your journey. See you next time.